Hi everyone, in this video I'll demonstrate how to replace the water filter manifold in a GE refrigerator. And in my case this is model number GSE25HMHEHES, and you can find that information inside the refrigerator compartment. You should find a sticker that looks something like that tells you your model number and serial number, and then you can use that information to search for parts that are compatible with your specific refrigerator. Now I'm doing this because in my case my water filter manifold appears to be defective, and it's preventing flow of water to the water dispenser and ice maker, and I'll demonstrate that in just a moment. I suppose it's also possible that you might need to replace your water filter manifold if it gets damaged by trying to install the wrong type of filter or just improper installation of the filter. But again, in my case, I'm doing this because I'm having an issue with water flow. Now this refrigerator is, I believe, about 5 years old, and this problem first manifested, I believe, around 2 years after we purchased it, maybe 2.5 years. And at first the only symptom was after a filter change, the dispenser stopped working properly, and when we would depress the lever in the back to dispense water, it would just make a really loud vibrating sound, and sort of a spurt of water would come out at first and then nothing at all. Over time it's progressed to now just at times it will dispense very, very slowly like this, or depending on fluctuations in water pressure coming to our house, it will not dispense any water at all. And when this first came up, the ice maker actually continued to work for, I don't know, a year or so, and then recently it's just stopped working most of the time. Occasionally I'll notice that it'll produce very small pieces of ice, not full cubes. So I've just gotten to the point where I'm tired of dealing with it. I'm ready to repair it. And I believe this is probably a fairly common problem. Now, I should say that this issue of no water flow could potentially be caused by a frozen water line in the door of the refrigerator, or I guess I should say in the door of the ice maker, the freezer compartment. This door here, I've checked that. Does not appear to be the problem. I actually took apart some of the lines and blew air through them between the water filter housing or the manifold and the dispenser. It seems like the air flew or passed through without any obstruction. So I don't think my issue is an ice jam. But you probably should check for that before you jump into replacing parts. If you can, probably the easiest and most surefire way to test it would just be take all your food out, do a defrost on the fridge, unplug it for a while, let all the ice and stuff inside melt out, and then try it again, see if water flows. And if you don't get that good flow of water from the dispenser, then it's very likely that you have the same issue I do. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing we need to do is pull the refrigerator away from the wall so we can access the back, which I have already done. And the part we're going to be replacing is where the filter attaches. So obviously this is the filter itself, and the manifold is hidden by this plastic cover here. So we need to get this out of our way. That's very easy to do. Just gently squeeze in on both sides like that, and then pull out, and that cover will remove, and it will expose the manifold, which is this piece here that the filter attaches to, and the back of this has lines that stick out the back of the refrigerator. So we're going to need to remove the filter and then take this part out, accessing from the front and the back. So we can start by twisting the filter and gently pull down to remove it. And while we're in here, I will try to show you what I believe is the issue causing this. If you see right there by my finger, there's a pointy little piece of plastic protruding through this round collar. I believe that is the issue. That little pointy plastic piece is intended to align with these tapered rings there and there, depending on which way you put the filter in. You know, it can only go in one way, basically, but it could be rotated 180 degrees and still insert properly. So there's a little tapered ring on both sides, and when you insert the filter and twist, I guess you would twist this way, the high point of those tapered rings, whichever one lines up with this little pointy plastic piece, the high point, once the filter is locked in place, should be aligned just below that, and it will force this little pointy thing up, and that will that little pin tile being pushed up will allow the flow of water through the filter and through the manifold to the water dispenser and the ice maker. I think what's going on is that potentially this little pin tile is either too short or is not durable and wears out, you know, kind of through friction of inserting and removing the filter over time. Wears off the tip of that little pin tile and causes it to be just too short to be fully depressed and open the valve inside to allow water to flow. And interestingly, it seems like this is a fairly common problem, because when I ordered the new part on the GE website, I realized that the part number for the original part number for the manifold was discontinued, and they've updated it with a new part number, and I'm guessing that means that they realized there was a design flaw and have hopefully corrected it. The new part I received looks pretty similar, but I'll compare them side by side when I get this one out, and we'll see if there's any visible difference, and hopefully again that they've corrected the issue, and I won't have to do this again in the future. But anyhow, let's go ahead and get started. Let me grab a few tools and we'll jump into the removal process. Okay, so as I mentioned, I've got the refrigerator pulled away from the wall, and next thing we need to do is turn off the water, and I'm also going to unplug the refrigerator. We're not working on any electric components, but I think it's always just best practice to have something de-energized when you're working on it. So first we're going to turn the valve off here at the wall. Make sure that it's fully off, and we'll unplug it. And next, we are going to want to disconnect the water line from the refrigerator. So depending on what type of line and fittings you have, you might need some different tools, but in my case I just need a couple of adjustable wrenches to loosen the fitting here. Just need to turn these in opposite directions, and that's going to remove the line from the wall, because this plastic line on the back of the refrigerator is part of the manifold itself, and we're going to have to replace this. Be a good idea to have a towel or a bucket or both handy, just because you're going to get some residual water coming out of here. Again, make sure your valve is off at the wall. You do not want to disconnect this fitting until you've made sure water is turned off. So I'm going to get this disconnected, and we'll move on to the next step. Alright, so again we need to disconnect this fitting here. We need to put one adjustable wrench on this piece attached to the plastic line and hold that still while we spin this collar counterclockwise using another wrench. So it should look something like that. And again, expect some water to come out as you're loosening this. After a few turns, you should be able to finish it by hand. And there you go. So I'll let that drip out and dry on this towel here, and we'll move on to the next step. Okay, now that we've got the water line disconnected, the next step is to remove this metal cover panel on the bottom of the fridge. And to do that, we need to remove the series of hex head screws that hold it around the perimeter. In my case, most of these appear to be a 5/16 screw that requires a nut driver or socket. So there's, in my case, I've got 1, 2. Now this one here appears to be 1/4 inch instead of 5/16. Again, another 5/16, 5/16, and one more here in the bottom left corner. So I'm going to remove all of those. I'd like to have something to put them in. I'm using a little magnetic tray here, but just put them in a container so you don't lose them. So let me get those removed, and we will take that cover panel off and move on to the next step. Okay, I've gotten all of those screws removed except for this last one here. I forgot to mention there's, in my case, I've got 6 total. 5 of them are 5/16, 1 is the 1/4 inch. So now that that's loose, the top of the panel will pull out, and then we just need to gently lift up so that these tabs on the bottom here, here, and here can clear over this bottom lip. So we've got that removed now, and that's going to expose the other water line connection that we need to disconnect, which is right there. That's the other line for the manifold. So we just need to take our adjustable wrench again and turn this counterclockwise to loosen it. I'll do that next. Okay, we're ready to loosen this fitting. Again, we're going to turn it counterclockwise. And just like before, there may be some residual water that drips out here. So just have something ready to clean that up or catch it. So it'll have this brass hex fitting that will slide up around the line, and then we just need to grasp the line and pull out gently like that. And as I mentioned, there's a little bit of water in there, so have a towel or a bucket handy. All right, I'm going to dry that up and we will move on to the next step. Okay, now that both water lines are disconnected, we can follow them up the back of the refrigerator. And there should be a metal cover plate just like this near the top. And we want to go ahead and remove that by taking out these 2 screws. In my case, these are both 1/4 inch. So I'm going to remove those, and that will expose the water lines where they enter the back of the fridge. All right, so again, we're just going to take these screws out. And that exposes the water lines where they go into the refrigerator. And you'll notice there is some sort of a putty material around here. We need to carefully remove this and save it so we can reuse it later. Basically, that helps seal the connection around the lines where they go into the fridge. So pull that off carefully. Try to get all of it and hang on to that so that we can reuse it. When we get these out of here, there may be a little bit more putty stuck that we can kind of scrape off. So set that aside. And now we need to go back into the refrigerator compartment and remove a couple of screws that hold the manifold in place from inside. Okay, so we're back in the refrigerator obviously now. And what we need to do is remove these 2 1/4" screws above the manifold that you can see there in the back, those silver screws. We just need to take both of those out. You are going to need a little bit of an extension or a long screwdriver with a hex attachment, a 1/4" hex attachment on it. In my case, I've just kind of stacked a couple of extensions or drivers together on my screw gun, and we're just going to gently remove each screw. Okay, so now the manifold should be loose. I'm going to just grab it and ensure that it is. Yep. So now we need to go back around to the back and try to feed those lines through the back, push them forward this way into the refrigerator, and that should pull the manifold through. So let's go around to the back now. Okay, we're back on the rear of the refrigerator now. We just need to make sure that these lines are not secured to the back in any way. In my case, they're taped in a couple of spots. So I'm going to peel that tape away, and I'll probably save that and reuse it to attach the replacement lines. So now they're free, and we can gently come back up here and push this through. Watch your fingers on this cutout in the back because it could be sharp. And there's also a zip tie here that has sharp edges. So we just need to carefully push this through. And once it pops free, it should feed through very easily. I'm going to go back around to the front now and pull it through from the front side. Okay, so you can see that's feeding through nicely. I'm going to grab this black insulation here and pull it through so it doesn't get torn. And now we can just gently finish pulling these all the way through. You may have to finagle the ends, because if they try to come through at the same time, they're going to bind up. There we go. All right, so our old part is out completely, and that was fairly painless. Let's pull the new part out of the box and compare it to the old one, see if it looks any different, and then we can get ready to reinstall it. Okay, here's my new part on the right, side by side with the old part on the left. You can see the new part comes with the lines, that black foam, and the fittings that we need. It also comes with this water filter cap in case you want to bypass the filter. We can remove that just by turning it counterclockwise like so, and set that aside. So again, this, let's see if I can get a close up. So I can get the camera to focus here. So you can see that little plastic piece protruding to a point. That is what I believe was causing the problem on the old filter housing. And if we compare it to the old one, it looks similar, but I feel like this one, the old one, doesn't protrude as far. I think this one protrudes farther and is hopefully made of a different material that won't wear down, so that this problem doesn't occur again. Otherwise, parts look identical. Again, this is a different part number. GE discontinued the old one, but everything else that I can see looks identical. It does look like the replacement does not come with this piece of styrofoam insulation that sits on top, so we just need to gently lift that out. Like so, and then transfer it over to the new part, like that. And now we are ready to reinstall this in the refrigerator. So let's get right to it. Okay, we're back inside the refrigerator and we're ready to feed through the ends of our replacement lines. My part did come with a rubber cap that protects the threads, the male threads on this line, so I'm going to leave that on until I get it ready to reinstall, just so I don't damage the threads in the process. So we are ready to feed those through. Carefully. And then now when we get to the foam, we just want to make sure that it doesn't get hung up and get torn. Alright, I've gotten about as far as I want to go without going to the back and pulling it in instead of forcing it from the front. So I'm going to change positions now and finish pulling this into place from the rear. Alright, hopefully you could see that the end of the black insulation is just right inside now. So I'm hopeful that if I carefully pull and wiggle maybe, it will start to feed through. Yep, it's starting to come now. And I feel like that is pretty secure now. All right, so now I think I'm going to go back inside the fridge and make sure the filter is tight against the back wall, and if it is, then we can go ahead and reinstall the 2 screws that hold it in place. Okay, as I hoped, the new manifold is basically pushed all the way back against the back wall of the refrigerator, and I don't know if you can see or not, but our screw holes are aligned nicely, so we're ready to go ahead and reinstall the 2 1/4-inch hex screws using our screwdriver or screw gun. That one's started. I'll get the other one started, and then I'll tighten them both up. These do not need to be more than hand tight. If you're using an impact gun like I am right now, do not crank down on it hard. You know what? I think I'm going to have to finish that off with a screwdriver just because of the angle. So I'm going to get those finished being tightened up, and then we'll go back around to the rear and finish making our connections and button everything up. Okay, so I finished tightening the screws on the inside, and now we are ready to reinstall this cover plate on the back side. And before we do that, we need to take our putty that we salvaged earlier, and I've just taken it and rolled it between my hands like this to make a sort of a long worm shape, about 4 or 5 inches long, and we're just going to wrap that around the lines like that, and then sort of push it into place with our fingers to seal around that black insulation where it goes through the back of the fridge to prevent any air leakage. And just kind of work it tight against the back of the fridge and against the lines all the way around until you feel like you've made a good seal. That feels pretty good. So now we need to take our cover plate that we removed earlier, gently bend these lines down. Don't force them and kink them, but just gently bend them and lay your cover plate in place like so to the holes align, and we'll take our 1/4-inch screws and gently get them started. Like so. And these lines want to pry out because they've, you know, They've been sticking straight, and now we're bending them, and they want to retain their memory. So I'm just gently pushing them and working these screws in slowly so we don't kink them. And again, these screws don't need to be super tight either. All right, so now we can make our connections at the bottom and button everything up. Okay, so now we're ready to reattach the water lines. And the first one I'm going to do is this connection here to the, I believe this is the solenoid valve that allows the water to flow when you press the water dispenser lever. This has male threads. We need to connect it to the line that has the female threads. The other line, had this black protector on it. This one has male threads, so only one of these lines can connect here. So we need to, that's this one here. I am going to use a small piece of Teflon tape to seal the threads. You want to wrap this the same direction we're going to tighten, so clockwise. Make sure it's not down in the inside the fitting. And then we're going to start threading this by hand to make sure we don't cross thread. And once you're sure the threads are aligned properly, we'll take our adjustable wrench and tighten it. Again, you don't want to crank on this super hard. But you also don't want it leaking. So you want to make sure it's nice and tight, nice and secure. I'm using a short adjustable wrench just to make sure I don't crank on this thing too hard, because the longer the wrench, the more torque you get. That feels fairly tight. So I'm going to dry off any residual water. And we're going to leak test this before we put the back cover on. So next, we want to reconnect our water line here from the wall. I'm also going to use a short piece of Teflon tape for that. Let me get set up and I'll be right back. Alright, so we're ready to mate these back together. Again, we're going to spin the coupling here clockwise in relation to the male threads. And again, we want to start it by hand to make sure that we don't cross thread it. And tighten it till it won't tighten anymore, and then we'll use our wrenches to secure it. Once it feels fairly tight, we'll stop. And now I'd like to test this for leaks before we go any farther. Okay, I'm back in the fridge compartment. In order to test this, we either need to reinstall the filter, or I'm just going to use the filter bypass cap that came with the replacement part. You also get one of these when you buy the fridge. And it's got the same little tapered rings inside. Hopefully you can see those. Those guys align with that pin tile and depress it to allow water to flow through. So we're going to put this in, give it a twist. Now we need to plug the refrigerator back in. Being careful not to stick our hands in the open compartment on the back since we haven't put the back cover back on. And we also need to slowly open this valve. And then we want to check our connections and watch them for a few minutes and make sure that no water is spurting out or dripping out. We just want to keep an eye on these for a couple minutes until we're sure that there are no leaks. In the meantime, let's test out our repair and see what happens. Let's see if this solved our problem. There's probably going to be some air in the line, so we may get some spurting when we depress this water dispense lever, but let's find out what happens. Beautiful. It's exactly what I wanted to see. It's been a long time since I've been able to do that. You get kind of spoiled having a nice filtered water dispenser like this, but it is nice to have, and I've missed it. So our new part appears to be working well, which is awesome. All right, so I'm going to give it a few more minutes to look at those connections back there, make sure they're not leaking, and then we will go ahead and put the back cover on and wrap this repair up. Okay, it's been at least 10 or 15 minutes, and I have been keeping an eye on our connections. I've put this dry paper towel below just so it would make it easy to see any new drips. And I've cycled the water dispenser multiple times, and it appears everything is bone dry. So that is really good to see. So I am going to get ready to put everything back together now. But before I do, I'm going to take this opportunity to vacuum off this cage around the compressor here and inside the housing of the refrigerator as best I can, being careful not to snag any of the lines in here and damage anything, but it's good practice to vacuum out all the dust that gets sucked in here from time to time. So I'm going to get this cleaned up. I've unplugged the refrigerator first before I do that. So I'm going to go ahead and clean up here and then get ready to put this back panel back on. Okay, I've gotten everything cleaned up the best that I can, and I'm ready to go ahead and reinstall the back cover. If you recall from removal, it's got these tabs on the bottom that need to slip over this bottom lip here. So we want to get it in place. There's also an indent right here where the lines and cord come through, like so. Alright, so first we need to get it in place and then lift it high enough to get these tabs over that bottom lip. And gently drop it down into place. And then make sure you don't pinch your lines here. Make sure they're lined up with this indent so they don't get kinked. And then we're going to take our screws, reinstall them. Again, there's a series of 5/16 and one. There's 5 5/16 screws and 1 1/4 inch. We want to get them started by hand so that we don't cross thread them. I won't bore you with all of these, but again, the locations are, we've got a 5/16 here, second 5/16 there, a 1/4 inch here, a third 5/16 here, fourth 5/16 there, and back over at the other corner, your fifth 5/16. So I'm going to go ahead and get all those reinstalled. Again, make sure your line here is in this notched area so it doesn't get pinched. Once we get that reinstalled, I think I'm going to re-secure our new lines to the back of the fridge here. This old tape just doesn't have much adhesive left, and it's not holding them tight. And I noticed when I was testing the water dispenser, I could hear these things kind of slapping around when the dispenser turns off. We have fairly high water pressure here, and it just makes these lines kick when it turns off. So to prevent that, I'm gonna retape them. I've got some pieces of foil tape, mainly used for ductwork and stuff like that, but I think those will work well. I'll just put a series of those on there and get everything secure, and then we can wrap this up. Okay, I've got everything buttoned up. I've got the line secured to the back of the fridge, and I am ready to put the cover back over the manifold inside. You can see I've already installed the new filter, and now we just need to reinstall this plastic cover. You can see it's got a slot here on the side that corresponds with this knob here on the side of the fridge. And then there's a couple of plastic tabs on the other side that will hook behind this piece once we squeeze it into place. So we just want to line this up, slide it in, and once it's in place, squeeze like so. And there we go. It is all wrapped up. Everything's put back together, and we can push the fridge back into place. And you can see, even with the filter installed, rather than the plug that I had earlier, the water flow is great. I've heard the ice maker cycle, so I know we're making ice. So this project appears to have been a success. So anyway, I hope that you have found this helpful. I hope that this process might save somebody some money rather than having to schedule a repair. And I'm certainly going to enjoy having the functionality restored for my water dispenser. So thanks again for watching. I hope you found this helpful.